If we drop down this way to Queen Elizabeth was one of the daughters of King Henry. She was actually the daughter of Anne Boleyn, which was his second wife. And Elizabeth is there's going to be two kings, a king and a queen in between, all children of Henry. But eventually Elizabeth is going to be the next king with or queen, monarch with any kind of longevity after King Henry. Queen Elizabeth is going to start the Anglican Church. The Anglican Church is the official Church of England. So King Henry, her father, broke away from the Catholic Church, while Queen Elizabeth was responsible for actually organizing that church into what is called the Anglican Church. Elizabeth once said that she was not interested in prying into men's souls. In other words, she didn't care a whole lot what men believed. She cared about her own personal power as queen. And so in the Anglican Church, she didn't want to offend anybody. She wanted it to be Protestant because she was a Protestant, but she didn't care if Catholics attended. In fact, she wanted the Catholic people in England to attend, and she told them she wasn't going to make them convert. They merely needed to come to her church. And the prayer books within her church and all of the doctrine in her church was designed to be tolerant. In other words, not to offend anybody. The inside of an Anglican church looks very much like the inside of a Catholic church, because she wanted to keep a lot of the traditions alive of the Catholic Church and so on, and make it look very much like it was inviting to both Catholics and Protestants together. Elizabeth is going to get tangled up in a problem with the King of Spain at the time. Spain remained Catholic, and the King of Spain was a man named King Philip. Philip wanted to marry Elizabeth because Elizabeth was not married at the time, and if Philip married Elizabeth, it would merge the kingdoms of both Spain and England. And because she was the queen and he was the king, because of the way laws were at the time, what would have happened if Elizabeth had said yes to Philip is Philip would have then taken over England, essentially, and all of the lands of England. And it would have been one huge kingdom, which would have moved England back to being a Catholic country. It would have made Spain a Catholic country under Elizabeth. So Elizabeth continually says no to the King of Spain. And she tells him, I'm not going to marry you. This is why we call Elizabeth the Virgin Queen, because she continually said no and she remained single her entire life. The people of England referred to her as the Virgin Queen because she put England before her own personal needs of wanting to get married and so on. King Philip got so angry that he sent what was called the Spanish Armada, which was a force of 130 ships that the Spanish had put together. Remember, Spain was very wealthy at this time because of colonization in the New World. Spain put together 130 ships to come after Elizabeth. Elizabeth miraculously goes out, acts like a real leader in front of the navy, puts the guys in the boats to defend England, and the English navy actually defeats the Spanish Armada. The Spanish lost a lot of money and a lot of worldwide prestige. This all happens in the year 1588, and this puts England on top of the world. England becomes the sole power in the world, or I should say the sole superpower in the world at that point, above Spain. So another thing that Elizabeth immediately gets involved in is she starts looking for ways to expand after this Spanish Armada incident in 1588. And she starts sending out all kinds of explorers and so on. Okay? Some of these early explorers that go out and begin to colonize the New World, they land in Virginia. Okay? And so you have the settling of Jamestown and so on because of the work of Elizabeth in colonization. This is why the state that we live in, Virginia, is actually called is actually named Virginia. It's named after the Virgin Queen Elizabeth for what she did with the Spanish Armada and saying no to Philip and so on. So you can see the Protestant Reformation is going to have a huge impact on the thinking of this man, John Calvin, and on the country of England when we talk about both King Henry VIII and his daughter, Queen Elizabeth. The Reformation is also going to have huge effects on the country of Germany where Martin Luther was from. What is going to happen in the country of Germany is that Germany is going to split almost immediately when Martin Luther makes his proclamations. Martin Luther was from the northern part of Germany here, and the northern part of Germany is obviously far away from the southern part of Germany, which is actually just above Switzerland, and below that is where the Pope lives, down here in Italy. And so as a result, this southern part of Germany is very close to this Holy Roman Empire that had tremendous power in Austria and in the southern part of Germany for centuries. And so the southern part of Germany is going to remain Catholic. They're going to stay with the Catholic Church. They're going to stay with the following, with the teachings of the Pope. The northern part of Germany was looking for this to happen. These northern princes that owned all of this land in the northern part of Germany were excited when Martin Luther nails the 95 Theses to the church in Wittenberg, because it makes this definite split between the north and the south. And so what they do is they hide him from the Pope, and they essentially stop the Pope from coming up and from getting Martin Luther. What they do is they support Martin Luther to a point where it's going to set off a war in Germany called the 30 Years' War. This 30 Years' War obviously takes place between the northern part of Germany, which becomes Protestant, and the southern part of Germany, which becomes Catholic. This war, this 30 Years' War, is also going to affect the country of France. France, geographically, is just to the west of Germany. And France actually had a Catholic monarchy. So the king of France at the time, as his father and grandfather and great-grandfather, they were all Catholic in faith, and they remain Catholic. But many French people are influenced by both Calvin and by Luther. And those French people are called Huguenots. A French Huguenot is a French Protestant. It is a person in the country of France, which is a Catholic country, that becomes Protestant during the Protestant Reformation. The Catholic monarchy handles this real well. What they decide to do eventually, at first there's a little bit of trouble, but what they decide to do eventually is pass what is called the Edict of Nantes. The Edict of Nantes is important because it is a document of tolerance. It basically says that people in France can be Huguenots or can be Protestants if they want to, and that the Catholic monarchy will not persecute them for being Protestant. Cardinal Richelieu was actually an advisor to the king at the time, and he basically decides during this 30 Years' War that was going on in Germany, he decides that France is going to do something that surprises a lot of people. At the beginning of the war, when the war first breaks out, the French are actually helping the southern part of Germany because the southern part of Germany was Catholic. Halfway through the war, Cardinal Richelieu decides that they need to make this a war about politics and not a war about religion. And so he actually switches the focus of the war from actually supporting the Catholics to supporting the Protestants. The reason was the northern part of Germany had the majority of the money because they had the majority of the cities, and as a result there was far more, and they also had the northern part of Germany was also had a lot of access to the sea here. And as a result, there was a lot of trading that went on in northern Germany, so northern Germany had the majority of the money. So Cardinal Richelieu decides we are going to side with northern Germany because it would be better for France economically and therefore better for France politically to side with the part of Germany that they could keep trade open with and so on. The last place we need to go to, or the last issue we need to talk about, is the Catholic Church itself. While all this is going on, you have what is called a counter-reformation taking place. By counter-reformation, we mean Martin Luther breaks away from the Catholic Church, and that affects, obviously, England, and it affects France, and it affects Germany, it affects all the different parts of Europe. The Catholic Church is going to have its own Reformation. They are actually going to meet together, and they're going to decide what they're going to do about all this chaos. They meet at what is called the Council of Trent. In the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church reaffirms their faith. And by reaffirming, they basically are saying everything we originally thought, we still believe. They believe people are saved by works and faith, not just by faith. They say the Bible is not the final authority. It's the Bible and the church's interpretation of the Bible that's the final authority for believers. And they believe that all humans are not equal before God, that there is a hierarchy with the Pope and with cardinals and local priests and so on and so forth. So at the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church reaffirms their belief. They also send out what is called the Society of Jesus. The Society of Jesus is going to start as a group of Catholic missionaries, or what are called Jesuits. The Society of Jesus are Catholic missionaries. They're going to go out around the world to spread the Catholic doctrine to stop Protestantism from continuing to spread. And the last thing, unfortunately, that the Catholic Church decides to do at this point is to put into effect what we now know as the Inquisition. And the Inquisition basically was the Catholic Church went out and tortured anybody who was spreading Protestant ideas throughout Europe. So anywhere that they could actually catch people, they were tortured, they were burned at the stake, things like that. The Inquisition was especially strong in Catholic countries like Spain. So if you look at Martin Luther and his ideas, you can see that these ideas had huge effects all across Europe. And because Europe is eventually going to go out and discover the New World, it's also going to have huge effects on North and South America.